reiterate once again that we would like you to, if you haven't already done so, please type, you know, where you are hearing this community from, where you are located in the nation. We have lots of folks join us from all over the nation, and we're excited about that. And then if there are more than, if you are listening, you know, if there are a couple people listening to this presentation, we'd also appreciate knowing that. So today, my name is Carolyn Peterson, and I'm the Rural Library Consultant for this, and one of my duties is this program. And joining me is Jennifer Fenton, and she is the Continuing Education Coordinator, and so we both put this together with the help of our wonderful technical producers. So, and today, here they are, and if you don't have, I noticed that both of their numbers have gone in there, and they will be more than happy to help you with any audio issues or any problems that that pop up occasionally. And we wanted to, of course, mention that the Washington State Library is part of the Secretary of State here in Washington State, and that we here in Library Development are supported by a grant from the Institution of Museum and Library Services. So without both of these government supports, we wouldn't be able to put on these programs. So with that, I think we've already mentioned this, but again, just another reminder, please, we need this for our reporting purposes, so type in your name and where your library is, library and where it is. Okay, so now we're going to get right to our presenters today. Gwendolyn and Mary Ellen have over 30 years of youth librarianship between them. They are certified Mother Goose trainers, and they lead workshops all over the Northwest for early childhood and elementary educators and librarians. Many of their workshops center on how to incorporate literacy, science, and math into early childhood education and storytime programming. Both of them work at the Spokane County Library District, in case you would want to get in touch with them at a later time and ask questions. So, with no further ado, I will turn the microphone over to Mary Ellen and Gwendolyn. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Carolyn. Well, I'm Gwendolyn.
And I'm Mary Ellen.
And before we get started, really quickly, we would just like to hear from all of you in the comment section. How are your libraries currently handling your Easy Reader collections? Do you have them pulled out in a separate collection? Do you have them arranged in levels at all? Do you have them alphabetical by the author's last name? So if you wouldn't mind just really quick to sharing in the comments how your library system currently addresses this particular collection of Easy Readers.
Yeah, I'd love to see everybody start typing now. Yeah, type. It'll take a while, just
That's
to let
fine.
you know.
Yeah, and I see some people have separate areas and different reading levels. It's great. Separate collection by levels, separate section, alphabetical order. So just Easy Readers altogether, yeah, that's really common. By levels in one area. Okay. Great, great. So quite a range, it looks like, which is what we found too as we started looking at Easy Readers. A separate section by color and author. Great. Great. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit just about how we've handled our Easy Readers and some things that we found that are super helpful for us. But first we wanted to start off just talking about what is an Easy Reader. And all of you know this if you're youth services librarians. It's a book with simple words and short sentences. It is a book that was written specifically for a child who is learning how to read. And they are most of the time meant to be read by the child, him or herself. Which is why we pull them out and put them in a separate collection and don't interfile them with the picture books or chapter books.
Apologize for interrupting. One of the current microphones turned on. We're hearing some breathing over. Can I just have you move the microphone boom to just below your lips, and that will probably eliminate most of that. Thanks.
And Mel, this is you.
So most of us remember Basal Readers, and that's mainly how most children are taught how to read. So basically a Basal Reader is just a highly organized textbook with the main purpose of teaching reading. And there are some core elements that these Basal Readers include. The first one is phonemic awareness, which is actually the sounds that children hear, the smaller parts of words. So once they get started with this, then they're able to isolate certain sounds and words, and then they're able to manipulate them into spoken and written words. Then we get into the phonics part of it, the systematic explicit phonics instruction. But basically it's very simple phonics where there is a one-to-one correspondence with a sound to a letter. And that's kind of what we all remember, is learning all those sounds that go with each letter and what an A sounds like, short A, long A. The next part that they concentrate on is fluency instruction. And what this is just how smooth and fast a child reads in. So that's something that builds up over time. They start out kind of haltingly, and then they start to read in a more smooth manner, and it's much more fluid. The next part is vocabulary instruction, which is basically just learning different words and what they mean. And then we fall into the text comprehension instruction, which is just making sense maybe of an unknown word that's in the text within the context of reading. They call that word attack. So they actually try to figure out what that word means with everything else that they have read. So basically that's Basal Readers in a nutshell. They're still widely used, and so they don't necessarily use stories that are already written. They write these stories purposely for children who are learning how to read, and then they progress in difficulty as the children move on.
And the other thing we wanted to review with everyone was just the key reading skills. And those are basically two different kinds of things. One is decoding, which is is a constrained reading skill, and then comprehension, which is an unconstrained skill. Decoding is basically that process that those of us who are familiar with early literacy and Every Child Ready to Read understand as learning that the letters they see have a sound, the letters represent sounds they hear in words, the words they hear and say can be written with letters. If you remember Every Child Ready to Read, the first edition, those are the 6 skills of early literacy. This would correlate to letter knowledge, print awareness, phonological awareness, and print motivation. And that's a constrained skill, which really means that once you've mastered the code, you've learned it. You don't get better at it. You've simply mastered it, and you move on from there. Comprehension is understanding the print, learning the meanings of individual words, and learning the meaning of stories they read. And again, to refer back to Every Child Ready to Read, these skills correlate most closely to vocabulary development and then narrative skills, what we all talked about as narrative skills. And this is an unconstrained skill. We get better at this over time through exposure, through reading lots of different things, and reading increasingly more difficult text. And the comprehension is the piece that's actually the best predictor of long-term reading success. So when you think about and you're looking at readers, there's 2 pieces of learning to read: decoding, the constrained skill, and then comprehension, which is that unconstrained skill that kids get better and better and better at over time.
So why do libraries isolate readers? Basically, we isolate them because we know it's a section that parents and children and teachers all need help with. And they're separated out too because their purpose is to facilitate learning how to read. And the collection is supporting that very beginning literacy as children are off in their on the road to learning how to read. This is a very common practice for libraries to isolate the readers, and our purpose in that is hopefully to make it easier as parents come in and they're looking for books to work with their children with. Basically, it's something that we all do, and we do keep them separate from our picture books and our chapter books.
let's talk a little bit about the easy reader dilemma. I think we've all had the experience of working with the public and having a parent and a child come in, and let's say the child is in kindergarten, maybe just early stages of learning to read, and they come up to the information desk and say, I'm looking for a book that my kindergartner can practice reading with right now, and we're maybe 3 or 4 months in, so very, very beginning stages of learning to read. And so we take them over to the collection, and we start pulling off what are level 1 books and are according to the publishers. And so I pulled an assortment off of our shelf, and that's what you're looking at here. So you'll see that Little Bear and the Marco Polo by Elsie Minerick. We're all familiar with the Little Bear stories. Dolores and the Big Fire, Splat, and then Pumpkins. And these are all level 1s according to these publishers. But if you look down at the bottom, you get a sense that these are very, very different books, and they're not all written for with the same child or level of reading in mind. So Little Bear, a level 1 in the I Can Read series, has 949 words. That's a big, meaty text for a kindergartner. And I have a reading recovery range here, and I'll explain more about what that is. But you'll see that it's a 13 to 22 in their reading level, which puts it at really into 2nd grade reading level. So that's probably not the right book for our 1st grader. So we'll move on to the next one, Dolores and the Big Fire. Ooh, 481 words. We're getting closer, but even that one has a reading recovery range, which is just one system of leveling books of 9 to 12, which puts it solidly in 1st grade. So really not going to be the just right book for our young reader. Splat with 61 words is looking a little bit better now. And that's reading recovery range is 1 to 4. So that's very, very early. That looks like it could be a good fit. And then Pumpkins has a word count of 86, and that reading recovery range is actually more in the beginning of 1st grade. So there's a huge range, and publishers are so very nice to put some sort of level. They might call it a level A, they might call it an I Can Read book level 1, or a pre-level 1, or a level 2. They don't mean the same thing. They're all using a different system, just as our schools are. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and share a chart with you. I think, Jeremy, is this the one? This is the chart that you have already. Yes. So go ahead, and he's pushing this file out to you, so go ahead and open it. It's the reading chart. And take a look at it together. And so if you look, I've got this reading chart has, I'm going to go ahead and just pull it up for you too. Oh no, no I'm not. Yes I am. Here, so you can look at it with me. So hopefully everyone can see this. So this is a reading level correlation chart that we work with here in our library, and you can see the grade levels, and then reading recovery, which is one system of leveling books. Fontes Pinnell guided reading, a lot of schools use that system. DRA, that's what we used back when I was learning to read. There's the Basal equivalence, which Mary Ellen already talked about, and way over on the right side, there's Lexile levels. And so one of the things I wanted you all to observe is just that mapping these is quite a challenge, and depending on what the publisher is using as they level their books, it doesn't mean the same thing. And there's numbers, and there's letters, and there's primers, and there's grade levels, and all of these things. Most of us are familiar with Lexile levels. I know a lot of parents are when they come in and they're looking for books for their children, but I particularly wanted you all to notice that for kindergarten and grade 1, they really aren't showing up as a Lexile level at all. So if a book's written with the intent of a child being able to read it themselves in early 1st grade or in kindergarten, Lexile is no help there. The reading recovery, which we use quite a bit to refer to, is actually a system, it's a reading intervention system, so it's really something that's curriculum and a system that's used by reading specialists to help kids make up ground, and that's why there's so many different levels. There are 34 different reading recovery levels. So there's quite a mismatch of all of these things, and I just wanted everyone to take a good look at that so that you would know what we're talking about. And this is part of the difficulty. So a parent coming into our library system is going to be looking for, oops, sorry. I got to get out of this. There. So a parent coming into our library system and looking for books without help is probably going to gravitate towards that level 1. But there's such a range that it's really a challenge for them to help their child find the exact right book that they're looking for.
So when we were looking at our reader collection, the barn is there because we felt like when parents came in, it was like hitting the broadside of a barn when they were trying to pick out a book for their child. So we went to PLA in 2008 and got to hear the West Bloomfield Township Library talk about what they had done with their early readers, and both Gwendolyn and I came out of there going, oh my gosh, we have to do this. So we say our levels on here, there's 4 levels. It's actually their levels, and they were a great help as we kind of redid what we were doing with our readers, because we wanted to take it and narrow it down a little bit from one big target into 4 different target areas that parents and children could kind of shoot for when they came in looking for the just right book for them.
It's a little complicated, but we really felt it was important to go the extra step and address this collection differently than every other part of our library. And we wanted to provide better access to the collection because we all knew from working with parents and kids in our library that they were confused. They'd walk in with information from their teacher about, my child needs to be reading 20 minutes a day, they need to be reading at their reading level. What should I be giving them there in kindergarten and first grade? Even our staff could be confused. You know, we don't always have a children's librarian available every hour that we're open. Gosh, that would be nice, but we don't, and I'm sure a lot of your libraries are the same. So we needed to provide a way for staff to provide really excellent readers advisory to our library members in a way that made sense, and also for our library members to be able to navigate the collection themselves. It's a simple way to support literacy in our community. And for us, we'd already jumped on board the Every Child Ready to Read, and we're really engaged with early literacy, and putting our readers into levels seemed like the next logical step in that process. And it works. Our teachers and parents are very appreciative. We have some bookmarks and things that we send out to the schools. The parents find it really easy to navigate. And our materials are circulating at a 50% float rate, and that's almost as good as our DVDs, which is saying something because, yes, we still have DVDs, and yes, they circulate tremendously in our library system, but so do our easy readers. So it works really well. In fact, the last time one of my librarians was weeding through the collection of one of our larger libraries, she came to me and she said, do you realize out of everything on the shelf, I only had 5 items that have not circulated in the last 6 months. And of those, a lot of them were just missing or lost. So we're pretty happy with having made this tremendous big shift.
So how did we do this? So we've got our 4 levels. The first level is pre-emergent. We actually label all our books with colors and ER for early reader. This level happens to be our white label. And so these books typically, they're short enough they can be memorized by a student, and they have a lot of picture support, so if the kids are trying to figure out what's going on, they can use the pictures to figure out what the words mean. Very large print, and there's a lot of space between each word, and a lot of times the words are in the same spot on every single page throughout the story. There's a lot of repetition. It's very predictable, and a lot of times there's a rhyming text so the kids can get into that rhythm and use that phonemic awareness where they're really listening to the sounds of words. Usually there's 1 or 2 lines of text per page. They're very simple, short stories. They usually don't even really have a plot to them, and it's very simple or language that the kids would typically use in conversation. There's very little punctuation. In fact, I think the only punctuation that you do see is maybe a period. And then they start with the use of those high-frequency words, the words that the kids are eventually going to memorize, like a, the, and they use those quite a bit. Typically, this is a very beginning kindergartner to beginning first grade. One thing with this level is that the books, it's very hard to find books in this category. There's not that much published, so we have a lot of multiple copies available for our families to use. Now the Preemergent Reader, they're starting to be aware that the text should be read from left to right and from top to bottom. They know that those words that they're seeing have some sort of meaning. They may not know that yet, but they're beginning to figure that out. And then they use the pictures that they see in the text to help them decode what the words actually mean. And this is, once again, one of those very beginning readers where they're just starting to recognize certain words and using the pictures along with the text to be able to read out loud.
So the next level is the Emergent Readers. Oh, and I noticed in the comments that Pam is also a fan of West Bloomfield. Yay! Yeah, so the books for that are emergent books have some similarities to the pre-emergent in terms of spacing, location, size of print, and picture support. There are more words per page, more complex sentences, more lines of text per page, maybe up to 8, and then you start to see the use of inflected endings like S and ed and ing, and a wider variety of punctuation, maybe some question marks or an exclamation point. And again, students using who are emergent readers need to be able to use one of the queuing systems or reading strategies to decode unknown words. So they might be able to kind of glean the meaning from the rest of the sentence. They can look at the structure. They're using visual cues. They're looking at the pictures. They're trying to make a guess or sound out the word. So they're able to use some reading strategies as they go along. The Emergent Reader is beginning to recognize all of those sight words, and all of these are that big list that we all have seen and probably have in our libraries of the 100 sight words that first graders need to know. They're sounding out the beginning and ending of simple words. They can listen to themselves reading, stop when they make an error, and then correct themselves. And that's very exciting. And then also they're beginning to recognize and read word endings like S and S and ing and
The next level is the early Fluent level, and this is where the whole process is starting to come together for a lot of students. They should be able to use the 3 queuing systems together to help them figure out what's going on in the story, and they're starting to check themselves for accuracy as they read. They still have a lot of picture support where they're looking at the pictures to figure out maybe what the text might be saying. And here's where the text gets a little bit smaller, and then we start to see more normal word spacing where there's not so much white space between the words, and there's usually words on every page rather than every other page, and a lot of times now you're starting to see the text in different locations on the page. So there's more and more text starting to be seen in the books. There's a decrease in those repetitive patterns and and a decrease in rhyming in the text, so now they're getting more of a flow going with the story. And there's actually maybe a little bit more plot to these stories. There may be some action in there, and we start to see some genre stories like some little mysteries maybe coming up or some adventure stories. And now the kids are really working on those multiple syllable words so that they're having to really sound them out and also use the text to really navigate what that word, decode what that word might mean. So these readers, the early Fluent reader, this is where you start to see that fluency come in, where they can read pretty smoothly with very few mistakes, and they oftentimes will still stop to sound out words. They continue to use the pictures to understand the story, but they're starting to rely more on what they're seeing on the text on the page to be able to understand. And now they're becoming aware of punctuation marks. So we're starting to see some more question marks and exclamation points, and using their cues to read more expressively. So this is kind of a fun spot to be in when you're listening to the reader, because they'll really, if the word wow is there with an exclamation point, they're going to be going, wow, that's great. And so this usually is about mid-first grade to the end of first grade where you start to see this, and they're starting to really get the hang of it. Some of the Mo Willems books are in this area also, which can be a lot of fun, with Piggy and Elephant. So there's just some more expression going on there in the stories too, and a little bit more of a plot.
And finally, we're on to the Fluent Reader. And so this is the child that's really starting to cook when it comes to reading. They're able to decode longer multisyllabic words. They're reading chapter books and can fully comprehend most or all of the story. They're asking the meaning of unknown words, and they're usually remembering them for future use. They read aloud expressively and smoothly, and they like using punctuation and sounding like they're speaking. So these are the kids that's really starting to come together for them. So I skipped a book there. Little Bear is an example, and this is the early chapter book. So these books, you can see there's more literary structures and genres. They have more challenging ideas and themes. The episodes are extended. There are chapters, and there's more complex vocabulary. And this is the section of the library where it's our largest collection, because it turns out that most early readers are published at this level for kids who are really well on their way to reading independently. Not for the kids who are just starting out to read. This is where you'll find the Little Bear series. You'll find Mr. Putter and Tabby by Cynthia Ryland. You'll find Our Friends Frog and Toad, and things like that. And then it's really a fun collection. I wish that we had more in the other sections as well. But these are the kids that they're really just a short jump away from being able to read those step-up chapter books.
So how did we do all this? When you look at your collections and you think, oh my word, how are we ever going to divide this up, and how are we going to assign what level these books are? We actually are very lucky to have Whitworth University. We have a couple of large universities with education departments in there. So we were able to work with some graduate education students who were working on their reading endorsement. And we had 3 students total, and they came in and started to help us actually level our readers. So it was a field work for them, and then it also gave us that support that we need in terms of deciding what level we should put them at. We started with our 2 largest library collections, because we figured we hit most of everything with those 2 collections, and then copied it in the smaller branches. So once one book was assigned a level, we pulled in the rest of the copies and assigned them the same level. And that worked pretty well for us. The smaller branches every once in a while had something that maybe was a single copy. Our collections do float, so we, they just don't stay in one location. So somebody from our Fairfield library would maybe put a hold on something in North Spokane, and then it would end up in Fairfield. But we were able to grab all of the books at some point. We started in the summer, which is a time where we know that collection is used heavily, but we figured we'd catch a lot of things as they came back, and that seemed to work very well for us. And then as we assigned levels, if we had any hesitation about where to put a level, we relied heavily on the West Bloomfield Public Library. That was great to be able to go right into their catalog and see what they had leveled their readers at, and then we can use that. West Bloomfield has a couple of early childhood specialists there with reading as their expertise, so that we were able to use their expertise as we assigned and leveled our readers. So the labeling part of it, which can be a little overwhelming for everyone, we actually did it in the branches ourselves. So we didn't have to send everything into collection services to do. So as we were assigning the levels, we were able to go ahead and put on the level, put the sticker right on the book, and it was done. And then we were also able to, in our catalog, we're very lucky to have different locations that we can assign. So we used the 4 locations, and we were able to actually change those ourselves into in the library. So we would just have our stacks of books, and once the Whitworth students finished up with leveling them, we'd pass them off to one of our other staff, and they would actually go in and just make the changes right there in the library. So, and then they'd go out onto the shelf. And speaking of shelving, I will say that we had no change in our space allocation for this collection. It was just rearranging it so that it fell right into the different levels. And we used little dividers that had the label on it and the color on it, so it was easy for parents and children to find where they needed to go on the shelf. But really, we didn't need to add any more space. We just used the space that we already had.
Yeah. So here, since we've talked about them several times, this is West Bloomfield Township's public library website, and this is their Grow Up Reading site. And this is an amazing resource, and I have to say, full disclosure, super jealous. But maybe we have a new website in Spokane County, so we have some new possibilities of things we might be able to do. And so we'll be looking more at this. But what I want to direct you all to is this first grade piece, their Ready, Set, Read for first grade. And you'll see, let me get my little pointer. The Preemergent Readers and Emergent Readers, Early Fluent Readers, and Fluent Easy Readers over on the left in that menu. If you click on any one of those on their website, it'll take you right into their catalog and all of the books that meet that criteria, which is fantastic. And they've done a lot of work. Penny Neef is their reading specialist who set up this program and did the presentation at PLA. That really rocked our world, and Mel and I got religion there. Then this is what it looks like in our catalog. And of course, we have a new catalog interface, and so we're still figuring out how things are displaying. But you can search in our catalog by faucets, and one of the facets, and one of the facets you can use is shelf location. And so you can search our catalog by shelf location or color and find all the books. So I did a search here, and this is a screenshot of what it looks like if you search for the Easy Reader yellow shelf location. And then you can pull it up and kind of see this is The Crazy Clues by Anita Yasuda, and it is at our Medical Lake Library, and it is an Easy Reader yellow, which in our library system, yellow designates the early fluent books, just as an example. So the other thing we've done is how we've co-located them in our library system.
And so this is one of my slides. This is one of our libraries. This is, you can see here, we just put in dividers here to divide the different areas here. So in the picture on the left, you can kind of see you've got the ER, and we've got the pre-emergent, and then we've got the yellow, which is the emergent. And so you can see that we have a lot of space right now in that collection there. We typically have a lot of space in this branch, but we also know that the schools just did their conferences, so we usually have a lot of parents coming in right after conferences to get more of the reader collection to take home and work with their children on. So basically, and the reason we like the inserts there to divide the levels is that it makes it easy. If one level tends to get a lot more in it, it's very easy to move so that we're not having to label the shelves directly. This next one, we do have some Pathfinders for our members and staff. So we have right above our readers on the left-hand side, you'll see what book is just right for your new reader. So it's right there so parents can refer to. And then we have on the right-hand side, we have a bookmark that we hand out to the schools. Right before conference time, we usually have the teachers all coming in to get more of these bookmarks. When we did this project, the first year that we did it, we had finished up in September. We sent all this information out the end of October, beginning of November, and we had so many teachers come back to us and say, thank you, this is such a big help. And so they were able to, as they were talking with parents, say, this is the area where your child might be focusing on in the yellow section, the emergent section. So you want to try books there. Of course, nothing is set in stone with these levels, too. One thing we want to mention is that one of the things that we tend to do is that if we can't decide what level one goes in, we will actually put it so that it's more successful for the child. So if it's an easier book in a higher level, that just guarantees that success and they feel good about that. But for the most part, with the help of West Bloomfield, I think we're able to really get a nice handle on what books belong in what area. Anything else, Gwendolyn, we wanted to add on that?
No, I think we can open it up if anyone has any questions at this point. And there's our contact information if you'd like to also contact us later.
Okay. Yes, and please type away. Most people feel very comfortable typing away. And if not, if you do have a headset and a microphone and you'd like to say something, please do so. That was such a complete talk. I feel like you answered all my questions. So normally I have some, but that was really good. But Martin Blasco says, are you going to make this PowerPoint available? This is part of our archive. Yes, so we will. I guess I would be interested, would you be willing to share the text of the bookmarks or your Pathfinders?
Oh, absolutely. We're happy to share anything that we have.
Okay, so quickly write down their emails so you can email that, because while we do have the PowerPoint, the text, of course, you'd have to hand right off. So other things, other questions that people have thought of? It looks like Anna, we have some people typing, so we'll just wait for, it looks like Anna's typing, and let's see if other folks are. Okay, do you have a list of preferred publishers?
Well, fortunately for you all, I have standing next to me our selections librarian, Sherry Boggs, and so I'm going to ask her real quick. Do we have a list of preferred publishers? Yes, we do, and actually, I'm going to preemptively say she'd probably be willing to share that with anyone who was going to ask. Yeah.
Okay.
So Don is asking, are we both decision makers in our library? And if not, how did you bring this to your admin team and convince them it was worth the trouble? Well, yes, we are decision makers, and yes, we also had to convince our admin team. Mel, do you want to talk about that?
Yes. Actually, we had a very easy process. Convincing our administration team to do this. And basically, we just put it into the light of how helpful this would be to our members, and and not only would we get the parents being very grateful about this, but we'd also be working and collaborating more with the schools. So that in itself helped us with our administration. Now when it came to collection services, we were extremely lucky that the person who was ordering for us at the time had just finished working in public services. This was a fairly new position for her, ordering books, and so she was all gung-ho for this, and really it was a very easy sell, especially since we put the labels on ourselves. We did the initial leveling. Now our collection services person does the leveling as they come in. So we do have kind of a cheat sheet that we have come up with that certain series may typically fall within in our yellow Emergent area, or they may fall in our red early Fluency area. So that is something that we were able to kind of segue into very easily once the initial work was done. I think because we took on the initial work ourselves and we had grad students helping us, everybody was just like, oh, okay, that sounds good. So yes, we were very lucky in that respect. But I think if you are talking to your administration and your collection services department, that really the big sell, I think, for everyone was what a service this would be for our members. I see that we have another question up here that was, do we integrate nonfiction into the leveled readers? And basically, no, we haven't. Most of it is in our regular nonfiction collection. A lot of times because the kids, if they've got an interest in a nonfiction area, they tend to migrate right to that area. So we wanted to have some things in there that were going to be at their reading level so they would have success reading those books themselves. So yes, we do mainly have fiction in that collection.
So I'm going to go back because there was another question that we missed, and Connie was asking in the Fluent Easy Reader section, would it be possible to have books leveled from Easy Reader 1 to Easy Reader 4 by the publishers? And I'm not quite sure what you mean, but if I understand correctly, basically, yes, in the Fluent section, there are publishers who have level 1s like the I Can Read series, and their level 1s are Fluent readers. But then there's other publishers who have earlier reading books, and so they might have like, I think the Rookie Readers are an example that go up to like D, or I don't know, but they use letters. And so yes, depending on the publisher, a book could be a level 1, a level 2, a pre-level 1, or a level A, and they can be all over the place. Typically, we're able to map an entire level to one of our levels for a particular publisher, so it makes it a little easier. And Sherry is nodding her head and saying that I'm correct in that, so that's good. Let's see. Then, so was it? Go ahead, Mel.
How long did the process take? Kendra had asked how long did the process take to complete. So we started at the beginning of the summer in June once Whitworth had started with their summer quarter. And then we were pretty much finished up by the beginning of September. We went a few weeks into September, and then one of the things that was great for us with our computer system is that we were able to run reports so that we could find the things that we had missed, that we maybe hadn't leveled, that were still in an old location code. Most of the time when we went to go look for those books, they were books that had been missing. So we were able to complete everything in just a little over 3 months. So that was a nice process, and it seemed to go pretty quickly. It didn't seem like it was taking forever to finish, and the summertime worked really well at that time for that project.
Can you give us an idea, this is Carolyn, on how, you had 3 students who were helping you. How many hours did they put into this? Was it an 8-hour day? Was it once a week? And how big was your collection that you did this?
Size of the collection, it's 10 libraries. It's a lot of books, but there's a lot of duplication of titles, so I don't have the exact number of the collection myself. But I do know that the students were putting in, I think they each put in about 40 hours total over the course of that was what they had to do for their directed field work for the school. And the big push was at the beginning was just looking through the 2 larger libraries' collections, because there's so much duplication in the Easy Readers that every library had copies of basically the same books. So we were able to get the bulk of the collection done within that 3-month period in the summer, because once the students had done everything, it was just cleanup. And then the ability to run our own reports every couple months and just catch any stragglers was very helpful. And at this point, I think I can run a report on things that are designated Easy Reader and don't have a color attached, and periodically we'll do that. And there's like 5 books in the system that have just vanished completely, and we can't find them, and so that we're just waiting for them to finally be removed from the system because they're missing.
And the other thing I can add with the students and their hours, too, is that we had a couple of students, when we first started working with the students, they worked in a group. So that really helped, too. So we started at one library, everybody worked in a group, and as everybody became more confident about the whole process, then they started going out to the other big library. I will say we had a couple of them that were really enjoying the process, so even though their hours for school have been finished, a couple of them came back to help us just so that we could finish up the project. And so they just logged in as extra volunteer hours, which they got some extra credit for too. So that was very helpful for us. There was another question in here, could you just color code the nonfiction so they could still stand out? And you certainly could do that. So if you wanted to do that, I think that would work well.
Well, I was just thinking, Mary Ellen, too, just with Washington State having adopted Common Core and the big push for nonfiction text, that's something we really want to think about in terms of supporting early reading, early literacy, and things like that. It's using more nonfiction. So it's definitely something we aren't doing now, but I think there's a case to be made for reassessing how we handle nonfiction because it's important. Are there any other questions?
I have one question because there seems to be a lot of interest in this in this presentation, and I just wanted to make it clear that Jeremy, in addition to the audio, you are able to see the slides. Is that correct?
Yes, the archive is identical to what we have here. It even picks up all of our questions, the chat box. The only difference would be that you can't ask questions and expect a response during the archive.
Okay, because there's been lots of interest. I think that this will be something that people will recommend to others and that you come back in and see it at a later time. So I think that's good. Any other questions? I see that Pam is typing, and let's see, I see Jody is typing. So we'll wait for these things to come through. Takes a little bit of time. If you think about it, it's pretty miraculous that we can be all over the country and have things show up in just a little bit. Just have to be patient for the size of okay, Jody says, are there other libraries who've done this, or is this a fairly new initiative?
Well, I think West Bloomfield Township Library was one of the first, and that was in 2008. And here in Washington State, that I know of, Spokane County Library District has leveled their readers in this way. Fort Vancouver Regional Library has a little bit of leveling, but they don't arrange them on the shelf the same way. So we've been doing this since 2008. But I think, and there's been a lot of discussion about it. I think across the country there are more libraries who've done it. And we think everyone should do it. Oh. Is it okay if I say that?
Well, I have to. I think it's just what parents want. I mean, I think that's the thing. It's just what parents want. So I think that's the big thing. It's so helpful for parents, so helpful for staff, because they frequently feel, they don't feel they know it, and this just makes them feel successful. So it looks like we have 2 comments down below.
Yeah.
Laura says that their easy readers have been leveled for years, but they're in the process of revamping it, and so they found this helpful. And Anna, who works for Walla Walla Rural County Library District, says they're almost complete, and they're using the
West Bloomfield. And oh, thank you, Anna! Yay! Let us know how it goes.
That's great. That's great. So, any other questions or comments? Well, I just wanted to mention that we will have another First Tuesdays. It will be on a different topic. We do tend to vary our topics all the time, and it will be on, it's the EDGE initiative, which is a PLA GATE-sponsored initiative. on how to figure out how to use a survey to find out the technological needs of your community. And so Samantha Becker, who teaches at the iSchool at the University of Washington, has been a lead on this project, and she's going to tell us all about it. And how you can really, and if you come to this at the very beginning of this project, it's going to be available for free, so I would highly encourage any of you who are, who might be interested in finding out the technological needs of your, come to this one, and it'll probably still be free, but later on it will be a cost for doing the survey. So we hope to see you at our January time, which is going to be the 7th of January. So if there are no more questions, we thank you very much, and thanks to our presenters. This was wonderful. Oh, the eater, never ask a librarian a question you don't want to have answered. There we go. Thank you very much. Their current size of their Easy Reader collection is 12,715. Very nice size. So thanks everyone for your attendance. And any other, you take down Gwendolyn and Mary Ellen's email. I'm sure they'd be happy, as all librarians are, to answer your questions. And so thanks everyone for attending.